My name is Barrett Brown, and I've been waiting for this day for about 6 months. In a way, I've been waiting for this day for about a year and a half. In another way, I've been waiting for this day since I was 7 years old. Now, I don't want to leave the impression that I have planned any of this. As I once told an interviewer, Tim Rogers, I don't make plans. Hitler had plans. I make contingencies, sometimes not even that. In some cases, many as it turns out, the enemy does the planning for you. When I was 7 years old, I first heard the term FBI. I don't remember exactly the context. I did know that my parents were fighting a lot, that my dad would sometimes get angry and throw things at my mom. Some of that I don't remember. Apparently I blocked it out, but it happened. And part of the reason for that was because my dad was being indicted by the FBI. At the time, he had made several $1,000,000 after moving to Dallas as a young man in real estate, and one of his partners had apparently been involved in land flipping, which is so illegal and dangerous that it must be responded to, even the possibility of it, with a massive FBI response, regardless of the consequences for other people involved. Anyway, my dad was found not guilty and apologized to by the judge sometime later, after he had spent most of the last of his money on lawyers, and the rest hunting in Africa. It's not entirely the FBI's fault. But it impacted me a lot. And I went from living in a nice house in Highland Park, one of the nicest communities in America, to living in a two-bedroom apartment with my mom and grandma, and sharing a bed with my mom for the next year when I was in third grade. She taught me to meditate and whatnot. It was a great learning experience for me. The fact that my original complaint about the FBI, is that I'm no longer rich because of it, is a pretty small complaint in terms of what people go through every single day, because not just the FBI, but law enforcement and governments across the world. Now, everyone makes mistakes. Every institution has problems. The question we need to ask, and we need to have the answers, the facts in front of us when we ask it, if we tend to answer it, is how much good does an organization do, or an entity, or anything, and how much bad does it do? I myself, despite having given a great deal of thought to this question, don't know the answer. No one does. Sometimes we get to find out things. Sometimes we're not meant to. Those are the best times. We had one of those times about a year and a half ago. I spent January, as did many, many other people in the US, Europe, and Tunisia itself, helping the Tunisian people in a time of great crisis and great opportunity for them and for the entire Arab world. Before any single article in the West had appeared, using the term Arab Spring or prophesizing that there would be massive, massive tumult in the Middle East, anonymous, which is to say dozens and dozens of people in this case, both in Tunisia and elsewhere, knew this was happening. They knew it because they were involved in it. They saw what was going on both on the ground and with us, and we made sure it happened. The first accounts of Tunisia in the US, aside from one article on the 27th of December last year, 2 years ago, was in Gawker, incidentally, after I had told Michael Hastings about it and he had tweeted about it, and a Gawker writer picked it up, had tipped Hastings, and wrote about it. Didn't know there was actual revolution going on, just knew that Anonymous had taken down some websites. That's how bad the coverage was back then, that if you Googled Tunisia and were looking around for it, specifically to write an article, you would not find that there was a revolt going on. It had been for 2 weeks at that point. Anyway, the story of what Anonymous actually did and what Slim Amanu, the greatest Anon, who later went on to serve in the cabinet of the new government before resigning in protest, that story will never be told completely. But parts of it will. That's not what I want to talk to you about today. A year and a half ago, on January 27th, while we were continuing our work, and around the time that Al Jazeera posted an article from Anonymous called Anonymous and the Global Correction, which of course is written by me, there were 40 FBI raids in the US alone, and then 5 arrests by the Metropolitan Police in conjunction with other forces in the UK, also in conjunction with the FBI. These arrests and raids of the homes of 40 American citizens, armed raids, were in response to a DDoS attack against the PayPal website. DDoS is a crime punishable by up to 15 years in prison in this country. Beyond that, at least several individuals who were raided were further harassed by the FBI for allowing me to help them and for making their search warrant available to journalists. I know this because I was involved in that, along with the very great Jay Lederman, lawyer, who has been instrumental since then in getting legal defense for Anons. Stanley Cohen, who defended Mercedes Highhaver, who was the only telegenic person of the bunch, unfortunately, and National Lawyers Guild, which occasionally did their job properly. Anyway, so that interrupted what we were doing, what Anonymous was focusing on, which had been previously little DDoS attacks on sites that engaged in the illegal cartel against WikiLeaks, and of course, the Arab Spring, which we helped to do. And when I say we, I mean a lot of people who will never get recognition for it, who don't want recognition, who, unlike me, will never get praise for the great things they did. Some of them have, some of them are known. Slim Amanu deserves far more praise than anyone else in this movement for what he endured, including torture. That's why he disappeared from the IRC, non-ops, for about 5 days. He was arrested and tortured. Anyway, we'll talk more about that as well later, and Bahrain. But for now, I just want to finish the story, which I keep forgetting. Remember, this is a very important day for me. It's like my birthday, except better. So that happened. So, we were already distracted a bit from the Arab Spring stuff. We kept going on with it, but now we had other stuff to worry about as well. Like, are our fucking kids going to go to prison for involvement in this? Some of the same people who were involved in the Arab Spring shit were involved in the fucking PayPal thing. Anyway, then later, more things happened. Among them, on February 5th, an article appeared in the fucking Financial Times saying that this Aaron Barr fellow had found the identities of all these Anons and knew their leader and their co-founder, who was X or Q, or, well, it turns out that Aaron Barr thought that Commander X, Q, and a man named Ben DeVries were all the same person. Anyway, and incidentally, if you read Parmelson's book, there's some incorrect parts about that. There's a number of errors in that, and that's one of them. That's misunderstood. Anyway, so we all saw that. In fact, it was Q that pointed out to me, as I recall. He said, "Have you seen this?" And at first I didn't really know, and then I read it more, and yeah, that's pretty bizarre. So we wrote a little funny press release, me and Topiary and a few other people, a couple of them I forgot, we all kind of collaborated on it, put it out on my Daily Coast account and on the non-ops deals and blah, blah. And then the next day they hacked HB Gary. And when I say HB Gary, I mean HB Gary. Because there's an HB Gary proper, and there's an HB Gary Federal that works with HB Gary every single day on HB Gary Federal's work, which HB Gary Federal exists apparently only because Greg Hoagland himself can't get certain classification because of his arrest in the 90s. Now that's the theory anyway. We can't prove that, but yeah, that's probably one. Anyway, so they hacked HB Gary Federal, HB Gary both had the email on the same servers, and of course they also were working together on how they would lie about the FBI shit. Of course, Greg Hoagland, the CEO of HB Gary, was planning on spinning it, in his own words. Or no, sorry, he didn't say spinning it. He said, let's give the, quote, soft impression, unquote, that, and I don't want to misquote him on the rest, I'm just summarizing, that Aaron Barr was the one that led these FBI to these guys, and without them, without him, they wouldn't have got him. Well, of course, the raids that already occurred had appeared before Aaron Barr had actually talked to the FBI about his stuff, as we know from the emails, which we have all of course. Anyway, there's a lot more on that, but that's the important part. Anyway, so Aaron Barr resigned a month later after what was found, including the Team Themis stuff. Now, HB Gary, that term, that got out a lot. What didn't quite make as much press, but made a few, was that all of this conspiracy directed against us, that involved me for some reason, even though I was doing nothing even remotely wrong, and in fact things that I think, the only things that I'm proud of in my life are the things I was doing in January 2011 up to that point. Before that, I was just a writer. I didn't give a shit about other people. I just wrote stuff and just walked away from the story, just like every other fucking journalist. Anyway, so they got mad. And they said, you're going to give your mommy and daddy and bear a letter. No, that's they got scared. Sorry. I should probably redo this. Just kidding. Anyway, HB Gary, they got upset. They went to the FBI, said, hey, the FBI, they had lied about. They tried to steal the FBI's credit on stuff just a few days before. Now they're talking to the FBI. We don't know exactly what was said. And in fact, I knew very little about their response and what they were doing until about 2 months ago, when another hack occurred. This hack, unlike the other ones, which me and Greg Hausch and others ran off to the press with immediately to ensure that the story was properly understood. And of course, the New York Times, as I pointed out the other day in the leak of the New York Times emails from back then, they didn't realize it was the story, and still didn't months later. Anyway, so that was well publicized. This particular hack I'm referring to now, the one that happened a few months ago, was not well publicized. It was a hack of a woman named Jennifer Emick. Jennifer Emick is a FBI informant. This is something that everyone kind of knew in a way because she bragged about it constantly, both on IRC, on Twitter, etc. But no one really knew, is she taking her seriously? What's the deal? Is she just bitching? We knew that she had that she had probably been in contact at some point with H.B. Gary and with lots of other people, that she had an obsession with Greg Hausch, and in fact called herself fake Greg Hausch on Twitter, and of course hid her identity, and it actively claimed not to be Jennifer Emick when she was called on it from the very beginning, starting in mid-February. She began releasing the identities of Anons in mid-February on her Twitter, or what she said with these identities, as she's gotten... Sorry about that. Anyway, so everyone's starting, this is a crazy bitch, whatever, ignore. It's not any harm. Well, as crazy as she was, and obviously she's very much hurt from her old anonymous days, whatever fight she got in, and the fact that if you Googled her name, the first thing that came up was a Encyclopedia Dramatica article with her picture and making fun of her and all that, and another thing was something else, and blah, blah. Someone who's been obviously hurt in her life. Well, as it turns out, and as we can now demonstrate, and as she herself has accidentally and unwisely confirmed herself by saying some are real, some are fake, which is what H.B. Gary also said, and so did Stratford on Valence, I believe, and others who have had their emails hacked and been shown to be involved in crimes. Anyway, the emails show her talking to Greg Hoagland, CEO of H.B. Gary, in which they discuss, quote, something to get Barrett Brown picked up on, unquote. I can't give a full account here of everything else that she did, either under their direction or on her own with her little company Backtrace that she's now fighting over the name with her ex-partner, who incidentally, in addition to the hard emails we have, has given some accounts already and will continue to do so. But I can tell you that at the same time that she was an FBI informant, and in fact paid for supplies, given assignments, actively worked with by an agent named Daniel Porsek, who's going to wish he never... Anyway. During that same time, she was being paid, or rather was supposed to be paid, by H.B. Gary for her services. I don't know if the FBI knew that, but they know it now, because I know it, and they monitor me. About a year ago, several Mexican Anons, I don't know how many, I only know a few of them by their monikers, started an operation called Cartel. Then they ceased it, worrying about the consequences. Then, having rethought it and having talked to me, having probably made the decision themselves, I think, to go forward with it no matter what, they brought it back into fruition, and I helped with it by explaining to the press what was going on. Of course, it became all about me in the press pretty soon. In the next few weeks, there was lots of articles about, is Barrett Brown going to be killed by the Zetas? Who knows? So at first, I didn't think I was going to be killed by the Zetas. I didn't think I was in any danger. Other people disagreed. I told them to fuck off, stop worrying, and not lose sight of what we're trying to do here. In addition to their original plan of releasing this information on the Zetas, I was also working a little bit more quietly on getting information that journalists in Mexico have on the Zetas and on government officials and on all cartels, frankly. And they all have evidence. All of them, or a lot of the good ones we talk to, they have a recording. They have, and everyone else knows it. My plan was to have them send it up here, and we could find some good journalists up here to run it for them, so that we could help Mexico. Anyway, people don't like to do that. That's not fun for them. They're very speculative whether I might come in and die. I'm approaching a 15-minute mark on this, so I'll make a part 2 in a second here, but let me just close this part by saying that during that, pictures of my houses that I lived in and my addresses were posted online oftentimes with the tagline Zetas or This is for the Zetas by several individuals, all of whom are ex-military and all of whom were in contact with Aaron Barr of HB Gary Federal during that time and some in contact with that informant.